I'm actually going to go through this twice, so if somebody joins in 10 or 15 minutes, we can then pick them up. So let's get started. So looking at this, I'm actually going to be working from the note, and what I found is that most of the providers are in the note, the nurses open that, so this is the best way to start. We're going to kind of cover some basic issues of cleaning up the problem list. Just hopefully this will be a good refresher for you. But as you can see here, my note is open, and then we're cleaning up the problem list. You can use your control key by selecting a problem, and then by using the control key, you can then highlight multiple ones, and then in this case, you can resolve and suppress those problems. So that's one of the things in cleaning a problem list that could be very helpful to you. The focus for the ICD-10 is going to be able to find the most accurate diagnosis we can that meets the patient's clinical condition. And I think as you've heard, the laterality is probably the biggest search engine tool that if you can use that, that will eliminate 50% of the items that you're looking for. And then we're going to talk about some helpful hints here that will helpful hints that will kind of narrow that search even just a little bit more. So if you're working from the problem list, one of the things that you can do as you first get started here in October is by right-clicking over a diagnosis, you can see Refine Problem, and then that will give you ICD-10 diagnosis codes that can be attached to that, maybe more generic, and allow you to select that. So that's probably the way I would start initially, is looking at the problems that you have and then trying to upgrade those problems. The other thing that you can look at doing is using the ICD-10 search. And what this does is it gives you the attributes. This will take you to the select clinical qualifier when you use that ICD and attributes. And you can see here that it would allow, in this case, choices that are in 5 categories here. And by choosing one of these, it will begin to narrow that search down and allow you a better opportunities to select just by using that search. When you're working out of the notes and you're on your assessment, choosing New would take you to the clinical history builder, the Add Clinical Items space. And here you can see that the default is My Favorites. And to save an item to your favorites, you right-click over one and then choose Favorite. Quick List, as you recall, is maybe 60 of your most used diagnoses. That would allow you to see them pretty much in one screen. In this case, I'll turn my Quick List on by using the icon up here by My Favorites, and these are the ones that are attributed to my Quick List. If you add an item to the Quick List, it automatically puts it on the favorite. So now going back to My Favorites, you can see here that we have folders. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but there are ways that you can create folders for some of your more commonly used diagnoses. That way you're not doing a lot of scrolling. So in the search engine component, one of the best things that you can do is remember laterality. In this case, I'm going to look for breast adenocarcinoma. The more specific you can get, the better off you will be, instead of just putting in cancer or cancer of the breast. You do not have to type in the whole word. And in this case, I put breast, B-R-E-A-D-E-N, and then we'll put right. And then as you search, you can see that now it's really compiled that into a more specific diagnosis that would be easier to make your selection. The plus sign is important because anything that has a plus beside it would now allow you to refine that search a little bit more and allow you to narrow that down. So anytime there's a plus by it, remember that that's one way that you can narrow your search just a little bit more. To create folders, you would choose a problem, and then you would organize favorites. And what that would allow you to do is now work within this portion of it to create a folder specific that you would like to do. So in this case, we'll just choose new group. I'm going to choose miscellaneous 2. and then close that folder out. You can see it's now actually on your favorites list. Then to add a diagnosis, you choose Organize Favorites, takes you back to that list, and then you can then highlight one or multiple using the Control key, and then choose Move, and it'll ask you what folder, and then hit OK. And that would then allow those diagnoses to be moved into that folder. So these you can create yourself. You can simply remove them from the folders, delete the folders by using the tabs at the bottom. We're experimenting with creating folders preloaded. It's not as easy as it sounds, number one, to map them, but also, two, there are some challenges, particularly what diagnosis do we put in there. In this case, we're working with a diabetes folder that Jeremy created yesterday, and as you can see here, multiple diagnoses associated with diabetes type 2 are there, and again, the plus sign will allow you to make that a little more specific. So we're going to create some of these folders and then kind of circulate them around to you guys and see how you like them. These can also be individualized. You can add to and delete, but once we create a basic folder, these folders can be shared amongst providers, which we think will carry some value. So we're going to be working with that. Also, too, we know that a lot of nursing and your MAs, they end up ordering a lot of images or laboratory, sometimes before you see the patient or if you come out of the room. And we want to be sensitive to that workflow, and we're going to be working with the nursing supervisors over the next week to help them with the same ability to search efficiently and effectively. The most important thing that you could do would be to give them the most accurate diagnosis that you're looking for, so that would help them refine their search and be able to get that information in. One thing, too, that you can do is by looking at, like if they ordered a chest x-ray for difficulty breathing, and we can see that over on the left screen here, by refining the search, you can then change that to a different diagnosis. So you can upgrade that on the problem list, and that would help the billing office, and they kind of are doing a yeoman's work right now with us to try to help move these things through. So the more accurate diagnosis that we can give them on the front end means the best utilization of your time to be able to submit a good diagnosis and a code that matches. Is there any questions that anybody might have? So I'm going to go through this again for those that might have joined in a little bit late, but that's kind of the basics. So I'm going to go through the presentation again, just to, if somebody wants to just add it in late, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. We will be kind of coming around and working with not only you but your staff. Any questions you might have, feel free to address them with Jeremy or myself. Give me a call, send me an email. But our goal is to try to make this as easy as possible. We've done most of the work from the IT perspective and the business office perspective, so we should be okay there if we can help them out with the most accurate diagnosis for the condition we're treating. So thanks a lot, and let us know if you have any questions. All right, so for some of those that have joined late or just joining, I'm going to walk through this again and see if we can help you guys find a little bit a leeway here to be able to search for diagnosis codes related to ICD-10, since we're seeing such a large expansion of them. So I'm going to start here with the problem list, and as you can see here, I'm going to add clinical item. I typically would encourage you to work from your notes. And so managing the problem list, if you are not aware of how to use that control key, using the control key at the bottom left of your keyboard would allow you to select multiple items, and then you can refine those, resolving, unresolving, and suppress. So a good helpful hint to remove multiple items at once. One of the easiest ways that I would recommend starting with is we move into moving from 9 to 10 the 1st of October. is if you have a diagnosis code that you want to refine or see if you can improve the accuracy of that, right-clicking over that diagnosis would allow you to choose Refine Problem. And you can see that that would open up a lot more options for you to choose from. The other option that you would have would be Refine ICD Attributes. This takes you to the Select Clinical Qualifier, which would then allow you then to drill down to a more specific diagnosis by highlighting those areas that would be of reference. And you can see that what that does, it narrows that search more quickly for you to be able to choose your diagnosis. Working within the ACI, which is where we are now, you can see here that so one of the things that you can look at here is how to search more efficiently, and using keywords is probably the most important thing that you can do from the standpoint of, I'll choose like breast adenocarcinoma. Don't have to type in the whole, and you can see here that narrows it down. The other is if you put in laterality, it narrows it down even more. Hold on one second here. Okay, there we go. So in looking at this on the ACI, you'll see that there's a plus sign here. The plus sign, when you choose that, will allow you to go to the Select Clinical Qualifier, which will then let you choose more options that will narrow this diagnosis down. So the plus sign is probably the most important thing for you to remember as we get started here in the next couple of weeks. By choosing that would allow you then to narrow your search down just with several clicks. Building a folder, we're actually playing with this pre-created folders. We took some information that was given to us, mellitus type 2, and Jeremy's created a folder with some of these diagnoses in it already. And again, you can narrow those down even more by choosing the plus sign. So we're going to circulate this beginning with our primary care providers to see how this might work. This is something that's individual. You can have them, you can remove them, you can add to them, and it won't affect the whole. But we're going to preload some of these as we look through them to see if this might be beneficial. So that's something that can be individually utilized. To create a folder, as you can choose the diagnosis and organize favorites after you right-click on it, but then it'll take you to the section that would allow you to create new folders. By choosing New Group, I'll just create Miscellaneous 3. Closing that out would put that folder on your favorites list. And you see now that folder is empty. Adding something to the folder, Organize Favorites, that then takes you to the Organize Favorite again, and you can choose one, or using the Control key, choose multiple, and then hit Move. It'll ask you what folder, and then hit OK. And those diagnoses will be then in the folder. So that's the way that you can create folders. Right-click function is probably the most important thing for you to remember. When in doubt, right-click, and it'll open up a whole new avenue of information that will help direct you as you're working through this. So those are the two key ways to focus on ICD-10, and that is through your problem list, refining that, looking at the ICD attributes, using your favorites list. The quick list button just to the right, this is will help you look at those 60 of your most common diagnoses, and looking at that, you can then narrow that down, and when you add a problem to your quick list, you right-click over that, choose quick list, automatically puts it on the favorite. A helpful hint is this funnel. It's just by the My Favorites at the top. When you open that up, you can choose at the bottom here, read our tips on problem searching, and that will give you a lot of options of how to find and refine your searches, and that's been very helpful. So those are probably the key points that will help you get started. using the plus sign, working from the problem list, working from the ACI, and then getting the most specific diagnosis in. We are working with the nursing because we do recognize that they do a lot of order entry with imaging and with the laboratory, and we're not trying to change that workflow. If you can give them the most accurate diagnosis, and if they can choose it from your problem list, that would be ideal. If they're putting in something for a symptom and you end up wanting to refine it, you can just choose that refine problem by right-click, and that would help with a more accurate diagnosis and remove that symptom from the list. So those are some key things. We will be kind of working and coming around with the departments as we move live into this. We've done the work on the backside with the business office. Jeremy and the IT department have linked the diagnosis. If we run into any issues, let us know. But hopefully this will help us all get started and get through this. Are there any questions? All right. Well, guys, thanks very much. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to give Jeremy or myself a call, and we'll do everything we can to help you walk through this process as we move to October.
Thank you.
I noticed there's a few that have just kicked on. I certainly don't mind going through this again. So if y'all will hang on for a few minutes, we'll get started. All right, guys, for those that have just joined, I'll walk through the presentation again, and hopefully this will help you be a little more, have a little greater ability to select a diagnosis that would meet the ICD-10 requirement. So here we're going to be working through the note initially. So I'm going to start a note here. So working within the note, the problem list is probably the way that I would recommend that you start. This would help you look at problems that have already been assessed and then maybe find a better diagnosis that would match an ICD-10. So in this case, we'll choose constipation. If you right-click over to constipation, you can see here refine problem, and that would allow you to see an expanded search that related to constipation and allow you to choose that with a little more specificity. The other thing that you can do is choose ICD-10 attributes. So the ICD-10 attributes here, this diagnosis doesn't highlight it, but that will take you to a clinical selection. I'll show you that in just a second. So if the diagnosis can be refined, that would be highlighted. So once you're inside the notes and you're under assessment, choosing new would take you to the add clinical item. And then as you can see here, your problem list is to the left, and then to the right here is the history builder and the orders. The most important thing to begin to look for is, does that diagnosis have a plus sign by it? The plus sign would allow you to take you to this select clinical qualifier. Now, this is the same panel that you would have seen had a diagnosis in the problem list had the ICD-10 attributes. So this would be the ICD-10 attributes that you would be looking for. And as you can see here, you can then select, and just with that choosing that option, that would then refine your ICD-10 diagnosis. Like, for instance, we'll choose gout. And you can see there's a significant number to choose from. To try to avoid scrolling, you can use a laterality, such as right, and you can use toe. And what that would do is that would narrow that down. So the more specific you can get with your diagnosis, with the main diagnosis, laterality, and location, that would improve. So we'll just remove toe, we'll leave right, and you can see here that it's the multiple choices are all right. That eliminates 50% of your searches already and would cut down on your search time. If you choose the plus sign, you can then see that there are 4 items that would help you refine these attributes. You can choose chronic, you can choose idiopathic, and as you can see, that without scrolling would take you down to these more specific diagnoses that would allow you to refine it much quicker. Now, creating folders, as you can see here. So creating folders would allow you to put multiple diagnoses under a topic. This would be pretty much like the service sheets we used to use, where you had a heading with maybe 8 or 10 diagnoses underneath it. These are folders that I've created that would help maybe isolate these, like the menopause. I've chosen those two. To create a folder, you would right-click over a problem, choose Organize Favorites. That would then take you to this box that you would work through. The first thing you would do is choose New Group. That creates the folder. I'll name this one Miscellaneous 4. Closing the folder out puts that folder actually in your favorites list. Then to add items, you would right-click over it, Organize Favorite. You can use the Control key to select multiple diagnosis, choose Move, choose the folder, and that would put those diagnoses in that folder. Now, this is specific to each individual. These are folders you can create, you can add, you can remove, but this is a good path to do it. We're experimenting with some pre-loaded folders. Jeremy has created this Diabetes Mellitus Type 2 folder. We put some pre-plug diagnosis in there. As you can see here, the plus sign then would take you to that select clinical qualifier, allowing you to narrow it down. But we think this might be of help. There's a lot of diagnosis to map, so it's not as simple as it sounds to do it on the back side, and not everybody might want the same thing, but we are going to start out with some of the basics with primary care. We can also do this for specialty care as well. It's just a matter of what the department might want, but also it can be individualized, which is probably the most important thing in this. We recognize that nursing is going to be doing a lot of order entry, whether it's images or whether it's laboratory. A lot of times they'll use a symptom as a reason for ordering the test, but one of the things that you can do is give them the most accurate diagnosis at the time they order it. We're going to go through the same process of how to search for them so that they'll have the same information that you have about searching for diagnosis. And then, of course, you can also refine a symptom into a problem that would be more specific, particularly for coding and billing. One of the things to watch is the funnel. It is just to the right of the search box, choosing the funnel and then choosing to read our tips on searching. This would be a reminder of how to quickly do searches that would yield your best results on your first pass. One of the things to remember is you do not have to type in the diagnosis incomplete. We use breast, adenocarcinoma. Just by typing in those 3 letters, we'll narrow that search down. And then just by putting R or L, the laterality search brings it down even more. So something that would help you move through hopefully just a little bit quicker. The quick list, remember that could be one of your best friends. That's the little tab right over here to the right. In this case, my favorites is on by choosing the quick list. You can have about 60 of your most common diagnoses saved to that would allow you to search quickly and be able to insert that diagnosis. To remember to put an item on the quick list or the favorites, it's right-click, choosing quick list or favorites. Anything that's on the quick list will automatically be put on your favorite list. So those are hopefully some helpful hints that will help you get started as we move into ICD-10 the 1st of October. We will be coming around and working with your staff and here for you to help make this transition as easy as possible. If you have any questions, please let Jeremy or I know. Are there any questions so far?